What's going on? Slip is here with match 3 of our latest Brain Control League. We're on the play. This guy, Diablo, I believe is a Gift Storm player. So I do have a little information there. Play Delta. His hand is okay if we draw another land for Esper Charm. Which we don't. Now we can Logic Knot something. So if our opponent is in fact on Gift Storm, so we see Thought Scour into Manamorphose, so we are confirming that that's a thing. We have a question, like if he plays a 2-drop here, do we let it resolve and path it and ramp him mana-wise, or do we Logic Knot it? And because of gifts, I would probably let it resolve and path it. Over here, nothing going on. Now we probably want to Logic Knot it because he can go off, like, small time, go off, and, like, if we let it resolve, you know, just chain a couple rituals and play a big Empty the Warrens. We do have a Supreme Verdict in hand, so that's good. I decide I'm going to Serum Visions here, although maybe that's a little loose. Push and Breeding Pool, we definitely want the Breeding Pool because we have this Cryptic in hand. Still representing things, but we don't have anything. Our opponent's representing gifts. So if our opponent gifts here, we're going to Logic Knot it and then hope that pathing a 2-drop is good enough. Logic Knot for 1. Incidentally, you have to be careful with Logic Knot in this matchup if your opponent has like a couple mana open, right? Because of the rituals. Some of those are instants, which is fair. Opponent plays a 2-drop. And then some card, a ritual, so we path this in response, so he only gets 1 mana advantage situation. He remands the path, at which point we're really upping his storm count here. So this is kind of an issue, but we probably don't want to let him go off. So despite that, I'm going to just stick him with 3 mana here, and he's going to need another ritual to play and Empty the Warrens. Exactly, like Manamorphose isn't going to do it at this point. But he has Grape Shot, which I think is only a 1-of in this deck, so that was a pretty good hand on his part. And now we don't really have a choice. We have to play Jar and just hope he can't really go off here, I think. I mean, we could have represented something, but our opponent muddles, and muddles for a Baral, I believe. Yeah, Baral. But doesn't play it. So if our opponent had played the Baral here, that would have been fantastic for us. We could have pushed it, but no dice. Still doesn't play the Baral. Now we're left with this weird situation. So if we draw exactly Logic Knot, it's better to not tick up Jar here. However, otherwise, I think I like ticking up Jar anyway. We can't push. That's an issue. We can snap Path. And if we don't draw a land... I mean, if we draw a land, we're probably going to Cryptic. If we don't draw a land, that only gives us 1 removal spell. Anyway, I decided I'm going to take up Jar. Maybe that's a mistake. We draw Water Grave. So I'm going to shock. We'll see what our opponent does here. So our opponent plays Baral. So we can path the Baral, push the Baral, or Cryptic the Baral. We probably don't want to path it if we can avoid it because it ups his storm count. We could Cryptic the Baral, but then we probably just straight lose to Remand here. Our opponent probably only plays 3 Remand, however, so it's not the worst. I decided I'm going to push this when it resolves. We'll see how that goes. Manamorphose, so that's okay. Opponent only gaining 1 mana instead of the 2 from a ritual. Our opponent rituals on top of it. Baral gets pushed. Manamorphose puts him up to 5 mana. And he plays another Baral. So basically the only thing we can kind of hope for here is that he doesn't have Past in Flames in hand. I'm going to snap path this. If he plays Empty the Warrens, that's actually great for us. But we just straight lose to Past in Flames. So incidentally, Crypticing the first Baral would not have really done anything. So I'm going to path now so Remand doesn't cost 1 mana. I mean snap now. I'm going to path, but he has Past in Flames. So no dice, no dice. I guess Cryptic wouldn't have done anything there. He had the right combination of cards. So that's okay. On to game 2. Alright, game 2 on the play. For sideboarding, I don't really like Srams because this deck punishes you for tapping out so much. I don't like taking out Verdict, actually, because I think they're probably going to lean on Empty the Warrens a little bit after board. That seems to be how they get most of their wins. So I leave in 1 Verdict. I actually bring in the Explosives just to have another way to kill tokens. And, you know, we can leave it on 2 if we get mana opportunity. That's fine. I could see Ruined Halo, but again, Grapeshot's probably a 1-of in this deck. I'm not positive. I'm not really keen on it, I think. Blessed Alliance seems terrible. Path is fine. However, we have 7 pieces of removal main deck, so I don't mind going down to 5, and Push is just a better card here. So because we brought in the Dispel and the 2 Negates, we took out 2 Cryptics, and then for the rest, the 2 Paths and the Srams, we took out Srams and the Blessed Alliance. We brought in the 3 Surgical Extractions, and then we brought in the Explosives too. So on the play, our opponent has not seen too many shenanigans, but he saw Brain in a Jar. However, I'm just going to keep this hand because it's great. Dispel for Gift, Spell Snare for a 2-drop. If we draw another land, that's even better for us. Serum Visions. Get a Watergrave. We do draw a land, so this is going to be a little painful, except that we actually don't have to shock ourselves here. We don't want to play Jar at this point. It's the same. Playing Jar like now and playing Jar next turn is the same. Spell Snare this, obviously. Okay, now we have to play Jar and hope that this Dispel gets us there. So our opponent could Ritual into Gifts on Given this turn, which would be a bit of an issue for us. Opponent's Serum Visions. So it looks like they were leaning on that Electromancer pretty heavily, which is great. Take up Jar. Now, the question is, do we want to bet call on our turn or our opponent's turn? I decide I don't want to do this on their turn. 1 for Storm Count. We don't have a Supreme Verdict for Empty the Warrens, so we might be able to get around our Dispel. 2, Remand. I don't really want to Dispel or Remand at this point in my life. So here we go. And I decide to shock with this so we can hold up both Dispel and Logic Knot, or Logic Knot and Fatal Push. Looking pretty good so far. This negates a good draw also. Opponent's probably going to Gifts here. Does Gifts. I kind of want the Dispel to Dispel here. So that we can negate and Logic Knot. We don't know exactly what we're going to... I mean, so that we can take down Jar and, you know, like push and take down Jar or something, right? If we had played Logic Knot there, we couldn't have taken down Jar. But I decided maybe it's a little risky, actually, to do that anyway. So I guess we could have negated that. It would have been more mana efficient ultimately. Also, taking up Jar would have been more mana efficient at that point. Plays another Gifts. So we're gonna Logic Knot this one, because we don't want to Logic Knot into open mana. We can get blown out by rituals, all those things. And Negate isn't going to stop a 2-drop here, but Push and Negate are probably going to keep him from going off. So here's a Baral. Opponent plays a Ritual. I'm going to push this. And we could negate this. That would not be the worst thing we've ever done. I don't. I decide to wait. We might get hit with Empty the Warrens here, but I'm not actually worried about it. Our opponent doesn't have many cards in hand, so this Empty the Warrens is only for 8, right? So we tick down Jar at the end of this turn. I decide to prioritize taking down Jar. Obviously, Grapeshot wouldn't have done anything here, and we could have negated Past in Flames. So take down Jar. We're going to have as many tokens as our opponent, and we see a Surgical, which is good. We would kind of prefer to Surgical like a Past in Flames or something here, but I decided I want to just go ahead and Surgical Empty the Warrens to see what's in our opponent's hand, and it is a single copy of Past in Flames. So we know now what's going on, and we can just negate the shit out of that. It's going to be great. Our opponent's at 6, so we don't even need to worry about these goblin tokens. We're just going to swing in. I'm going to do this. Unfortunately, we can't cryptic and negate, but we do want to negate to play around remand. Opponent swings. I don't really see a reason not to block here, I guess. We could just not block, it wouldn't matter, but I decide that's okay. Here's Manamorphose. We know the last card in his hand is Past in Flames, so he's tapped in a way that doesn't let him do anything with Past in Flames. Even if he casts it, we can just negate the Manamorphose, and we win. So, for match 3 here, we're back on the draw. This hand is, it's close. We can't really Serum Visions turn 1, but we have a Spell Snare and Negate to kind of get there if we draw a few lands, and we have a Brain in a Jar, which we probably don't want to play on turn 2. Our opponent mulliganed to 6. I decided to keep this in response to the mulligan. There's a land. Now we're in good shape. We do need one more blue source to cast Esper Charm. Any blue source will do. Our opponent misses a land drop here. So we could mash Brain in a Jar, slam Brain in a Jar, or whatever you call it, or we could just assume our opponent's probably going to hit a land drop and play around the 2-drop. This lets us play Serum Visions now, so we'll do that. We see Beck Call and Fatal Push. Both of those seem good, and we want Beck Call second from the top because we can't do anything with it next turn. Opponent does play a land, and here's the 2-drop, so I'm glad we didn't slam this Brain in a Jar. Although we would have drawn Fatal Push here. That's okay. Now, our opponent's been missing land drops. They could hit another one, so they hit two running lands, and then they ritual into gifts, and that would be a little awkward. But I think the upside of playing Brain in a Jar here is pretty good. If our opponent plays another 2-drop, we can almost definitely push it. If they play 2-drop and any spell, we can push it for sure. Here's a 2-drop, and we want to just push this as soon as our opponent goes to begin combat and can't play a land. Well, can't play a land in response to the push anyway, but still. Now, we have an Esper Charm, so this is good. This is going to be useful. It's generally a good card against this matchup. You know, you think about Storm as a deck that goes off from the graveyard, but really it requires a certain number of cantrips in hand to kind of be doing things, and cantrips are going to be pretty good with what our opponent's doing right now. So we're going to fuse Beck Call here. See what we want to do with our mana. I decided I just want to hold up Negate and probably Esper Charm our opponent on end step. Our opponent is getting a little salty over here because we're Beck Calling, but these are things that we do. I decided to Esper Charm now, even though it's only 1 mana next turn. We can Serum Visions if we get another Esper Charm. That's great. Opponent discards Grape Shot and Past in Flames. So that's pretty good. We took a win condition. He's kind of relying on this Past in Flames to use Grape Shot at all. It means he probably has an Empty the Warrant in hand. So we want to be careful about that. Like if he had played our Ritual here, I would have countered it so that he couldn't just empty for like, you know, a certain number. At this point, we want to draw a Surgical. Surgical would be great. And we draw a Surgical, yeah. So that's probably game, right? We Surgical Past in Flames here. We can go ahead and swing for 4. Opponent, a little salty, that's okay. He's just saying we've had really good draws every single game. I don't know if we had really good draws the first game, but like games 2 and 3 are pretty strong. However, these are just like random cards in our deck for all intents and purposes, right? I don't Serum Visions here because it takes us, like, I mean, we could, I guess we could Surgical Paying Life. There's no reason not to. There's no reason not to. Yeah, I guess I could have Serum Visions. That's okay. So on draw step, we're going to Surgical Past in Flames in case he gets another one, and he doesn't even let us see his hand, but he scoops right away. So that's good. Surgicaling Past in Flames, generally good against the Storm deck. And that is match 3. So we're 3-0 so far, although we've dropped a couple of games already. So we're 6-2 in games. So, you know, despite the 3-0, we're still having a few difficulties, but going pretty well overall.